thank you for coming out on a weeknight tonight. I wanted to thank Orlando and Joelle, who chose my book for the Sandeen Prize, as well as Colleen for helping to set up everything for me. I got a chance to talk to the folks at Notre Dame Press today. I wanted to thank them for the hospitality they've shown and getting my book out there. Also wanted to, sort of thank my cousin who came out from Kalamazoo and the students who are here and your teachers who forced or convinced you to come to the reading tonight. I appreciate it. I know you guys have I've heard midterms are on the horizon, so thanks a lot. And it's been a thrill to be back in the Midwest. I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and I just had the best day today in the snow. It was 90 degrees when I left LA. It's nice to be back, at least for a little while. So, and it's great. I think the people from this part of the country are very unique and sort of very earnest. I like being back. So, just to say a little bit about Underdays, for me, it's been a journey of what I'd consider perseverance. I went to graduate school, and from that point to the point of my first book getting published, Captive, it was 15 years. In that time, I published a couple hundred poems. I'd been a finalist 20 times. The first time was even 10 years, I think Carnegie Mellon Press, like 10 years before my book got accepted. And we all have our paths. And I think for me, the lesson is my book wasn't good enough yet to be out there in the world. I really feel that. I write in other genres. And for me, the lesson was patience and perseverance and looking hard at myself to write better. And I think that for me, the journey took the right amount of time. The reason why I'm bringing that up is in Underdays, a few things happened in my life. The bottom dropped out. I got separated from my wife. I had an intense sort of corporate job that was, 11-hour work days. I was traveling a lot. My mother had health issues, and I took some time off, from my family, from my work, and kind of went back to the work I'd been working on for the last 15 years, poems that hadn't yet made it into book form. And the whole process of writing Underdays was pretty much a dialogue with my past as a poet and past as a human being. And I dug into these poems and often rewrote them, often wrote with a different voice. And I put in lines from different things that had influenced me during the time I originally wrote them. And after a long incubation for the first book, the second book was an intense 4 to 6 month process. And it was interesting. Literally, the Sandeen Prize was probably the first or second place I'd sent it out to. And it's interesting how these things work out. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason, but anyway, so for me, these poems are very personal. I'm going to start with a little bit of a curveball. Colleen told me that I was here to talk about love poems from different eras, that it was in a publication, that's what was kind of out there in the paper. So I decided to bring up a couple of love poems for different eras for myself. 2 different women from different countries from different time periods. So a little bit of a palate cleanser before I get into the book. First poem is from my book, Captive, the Moscow Metro. Strangers press like fish in tins. Pale skin nestles in dark jackets, knee flesh peeking above slush-stained boots, fur liners and face masks flashing in shadowy cubbies. The scale makes me miniature alongside craggy statues of poets and madmen, escalators boring into earth on endless tracks, edged with gang writing on dusty ledges. In winter, the doors from the outside swing like a hammer, heavy and fast. There are piroshki with hidden bones, chain-smoking women buying lingerie underground, soldiers cradling flowers, kiosks of concert performances, teenagers on guitars next to babushkas with prayer rugs, windowless internet cafes, the smell of urine and life well lived. My love for you is like this. For me, that poem kind of reminds me that, love isn't always sweet, but it can be intense. The second poem is a love poem to my current wife from our long-distance relationship when she was in Brazil. It's called You Can't Kiss an Astronaut on a Spacewalk. You can't even get a proper tan, solar winds be damned. The pole is dark, irresistible, a mission that could freeze us beyond any border. So much to discover from here. You flew to me so many times and I'd stare at the picture you sent me from Ipanema. Your sunglasses, 2 moons, helmet, visor reflecting descent. So much to miss in our orbits. Next, I'm going to read from Underdays. The interrogator in retirement. He's waiting for the reverse metamorphosis, for the extra feelers to fold in or fall off, to wake one morning a man. He has been either furtive or defensive, a decorative shell for his lakeside folks, holding on for the pontoon to take them to the dim shore. He's a braggart to the thrill seekers and smiling victims who desire to glean truth in twisted sheets, fabricating tales of terrorists set to topple America by spiking the wine at the top writers' conference. His surprisingly soft hands clutch books with blank pages alongside the corridors of ties strangling necks and skirts exposing thighs to jackals. He squeezes pieces of bread into moist balls and attempts to decapitate pigeons, each ping bringing eventual reward. He wants to love recklessly, but his eyes remain desert dry, unable to view clear skies without seeing the curtains, the sun without feeling flame, the passage of days without remembering each pleading beat of heart, mouth, and feet. The next poem has some lines from a survivor's manual for, behind enemy lines, one of the things you collect when you're in the service. And I just pulled it out and put it in as part of the poem. Survivor's Manual to Love and War. Death is a loving dog with no children or chew toys to occupy its attention. It will lick you into submission, this inevitable pack instinct to join the vast departed. The standard autopsy needle, which has a straight shank but a slightly curved tip, is good for survival sewing. Love is a dying battery in your favorite appliance you can't live without. It is impossible to conserve this indeterminable reservoir, your capacity to burn through. Don't throw away any clothes, pull up your socks, close your collar, be prepared to jump overboard, avoid a tracking or annoying shots. Desire is a prisoner's final meal with access to the greatest chefs cooking for furlough in adjacent cells. You are its delicious mercy in a buffet, bubble or bunker, waiting to sit to find the price. Place your traps where the trail is narrow. Use entrails as bait and the skin as a sled to drag the meat. Home is on your back. Belief is the best-dressed bully, unwilling to let you cross a chasm in those comfortable clothes. There is little hope of moving past the cul-de-sacs and suits, the curvy hips and winding way. Conserve sweat by soaking clothes in the sea. Desert trails resemble interlacing cow paths. Sleep out the storm with your back to the wind. Survival is a submerged, mossy beast, hungrier than any living thing. A mass that roils the earth in mounds. You cannot see the holes and hills beyond the horizon, the tilled fields, the uneven terrain you'll need to surf. Take care of the injured, provide temporary shelter, stay at the scene of the crash unless you see land. Try to establish contact with rescuers. It will lick you into submission. It is impossible to conserve. You are at its delicious mercy. There is little hope of moving. You cannot see the holes and hills. Do not get separated from your party. For the poets here, that poem uses some repetition to pull lines from stanzas into the final line. Next poem is Battlefield Typewriter. When I read that J.D. Salinger interrogated POWs in Germany, and knocked back stiff ones with Hemingway. It explained everything and nothing. The ashes of Dachau cascaded off the mop tops of his dead-eyed youngsters, bone-dry dandruff, hidden but omnipresent. Confessions filled his battlefield typewriter, and keys clacked like gold fillings against wet pavement, his fingertips calloused from the impossible gravity. He fell apart once and forever disdained to explain the lost ones, the tracks a distant killer makes before disappearing onto a folded page. I've never read this one before. Poem about my kids. Why I don't set the clock on my car. The clock on my Honda has been wrong for years, from leaving on the lights. Each time I am jump-started, the digital display is derelict, and my kids and I learn to tell time by subtraction, pretending that we exist in other times and places. Wind-jousting yellow cars, dinosaurs asleep as hilltops, songs refaced as questions. Time has been a ghost since the split of houses, the miasma of not knowing all the laughter and tears. There was one battery charge where the clock was 1 hour fast, a mythical almost sync that can never be. My cousin reminded me when I talked to him a little bit earlier that we're getting old. So be it. This poem is called Midlife Man. The man who ate himself, folded inward, flesh origami, unable to breathe underwater, no matter how hard he tried to reverse evolution, to find his fingers in countless versions of self, villages, and family lost. The guilty man hid behind black moons, under eyes that had set sail to capture gold and glory, difficult women in those holy tomes he'd penned, but forgotten to show to his hunters, those bold selves hacking down to the bone. The angry man kept men in chains somewhere between bowel and ulcer, so that he could not hear the lashes, self-penitent cries and storm fathers, the cramped muscles and wan hours, fetal in sleep, armored with shades to keep laughter and sun at bay. The wise man architected avalanche, unearthing images of crashing through backyard gardens and wedding china, promises past and future, the bits unwilling to succumb to wind, haymaker fists, tender kiss, the rent skin that held him together this far. The man who released himself folded outward, blinking and sore, able to gaze across scorched land, aware that seeds would sprout new versions of the men whittled from epochs before, fire quenched outside and needing to be born. The man who ate himself cannot recall all the men he'd been, the farewells and ashes, adrenaline in tight spots, black eye skids and nails in back, man accordion returned to foraging, each step holding the weight of selves, ache of desire, unbroken earth. So I do write a lot of poetry and fiction about Los Angeles. I've been there now over 15 years. This one's called Caves of Los Angeles. There was once a valley in parched land that gulped water and settlers, underground aqueducts for manta rays and merfolk crooning chanties beneath asphalt, drawing legions to explore the uncharted depths. Bubble up in mouth froth and dew, beneath condor wings, airplane fumes. There was once a weary traveler who settled at a wine bar, noticing a woman in a wedding dress and combat boots, dark eyeliner and finger tattoos. He was fixated on her chest where hung a murky blue brooch the color of LA sky, and discovered that she had not opened it for fear of finding herself. She let him fumble with the clasp in her bedroom, covered with a carpet of clothes and unpaid bills to feel for the thin layer hidden there. Rise to melodies of coffin and egg, hidden things, and unanswered rings. There was once an unemployed man about to lose his home in North Hollywood, and he agreed to let a studio rip up his garage foundation to bury body parts for a small sum. for a film about an actor turned serial killer. Plastic bone pieces were painted by art school grads, wrapped in duct tape strips and red tar. He saw hands stained in the business of the buried, even make-believe. But this opened hole in rubble, this wound was real. Don't narrow the aperture to dusk. Knock on air and let yourself in. Soldiers in the dark. The first time I saw two soldiers kissing was in the Army First Aid Manual. Illustrations for resuscitation nestled among splits and tourniquets. Of course, soldiers are loved ones. This is the definition of family, protecting someone with blood and limb. Fear is a hug underwater in a hole barely big enough to hold two tired men huddling for warmth, lips pressed into rifle barrels, hoping the night doesn't light. Ring finder. The ex-diver who held the job before him was a legend. Retiree from pirate doubloons dug up beneath a man-made waterfall spa. No longer relegated to springing purple lays, the ring apprentice soon mastered the metal detector, alongside spouses in pools, in surf. He backtracked bands loosened by lotion and was called the ring whisperer by luau fire tossers for his ability to see the circle of life with eyes closed. One was found on a manta ray's tail and airmailed home, another in a swan's nest. Location swam to him in beach meditations, in ashtrays, under fire pits, on the fist of a mistress. The one ring he never found was tossed by a nocturne bride into a blender, poured into a bottle, corked and thrown into foam. He wiped her tears on his uniform sleeve and led her away from gloom and doom. At sunrise, their rings tattooed on flesh led them beyond the resort border and solitary beds into the roundness of light. So living in LA, I do not own an umbrella, and I kind of refuse to use one. Getting a little weather is no big deal. Even this year in an El Nino year, I just refuse to pull it out. So why I don't carry an umbrella. 10 days of rain a year in Los Angeles invokes the legend of sheathed umbrellas. My mother once told me a story about a boy who lost an eye on an umbrella's undercarriage. Mary Poppins has proven that you can get swept away by unbridled passion. Is an umbrella actually an umbrella? My umbrella stand is the perfect size for playing sock basketball. I once dreamt I was an umbrella in a giant's hand used as a torture device for wayward Englishmen. Is wetness the existence of love? Wile E. Coyote taught me that an umbrella cannot block rain in the form of a piano. An umbrella stays closed on its hook when the sun's astray and you fear that it is the unanswerable you. Mold spreads in the folds. Can the fabric hold dark matter? Desire cannot be stopped. I slept with an umbrella along my leg after my dog ran away. The sun fears its own shadow in the shape of an umbrella. What else are folded newspapers good for? Because I've never seen the umbrella yet that could lick its own eyebrows. An umbrella is a flower. It opens, it is dying. Is to be dry a form of disobedience? A single umbrella cannot protect my children. Freedom is a closed umbrella and the perils of love. This next poem, I think, was an old prose poem, that one of those that I kind of took apart and back together. For me, right now, it seems like poetry influences my fiction, and fiction more and more influences my poetry. That sort of having divergent thoughts, sort of different strands together isn't quite conflict, but it kind of brings opposing forces in poetry. For me, it helps me kind of get to the kind of something deeper in poetry. It's kind of my own mechanism. I know other poets have their own. Houses of straw. The scarecrow felt naked without its straw hat. It flew off in autumn on an oriole's wings and traveled the world 3 times and back. When the papers came, it was before the harvest. The hat had been woven by the farmer's wife, who loved to tuck straw behind his ear into his ear, for she feared her husband would tear him apart. Now her husband danced through cows and Kunar. When the snows came, she cursed the fickleness of straw. The dead should have more staying power. She ripped the green corn, cracked eggs on the stove. He ate from plastic bags in the rubble of Zabul. The scarecrow lost feet to wind and weathered a flowing white beard. At night she felt cold behind her ear, in her ear from the tickling of fear. He wrote about his love for her on his grenades. She dreamed of straw spinning from gold to grass, electric and cool to touch. She imagined a mustache of straw, unborn children the color of saffron and dust. He sent her a picture of him cradling a baby on a turret. Her body, once stringy and lean, expanded past all known borders, the sun boiling in her succotash, feeling new hands on her, missing ones now gloved. He was a scarecrow soldier when he left Bedambag. Through the thaw, she emerged with hard belly and thoughts, and found the hanging post with straw man's coat, nothing but the wind waving her to him, birds building nests out of him. Are you guys ready for this to get a little bit awkward? Okay. Nicole, could you help me out? I have a few Mad Libs poems in here. I'm going to, well, that's a good point, 33. Fill in the holes.
Whatever?
Yes, whatever comes to mind. We'll see what happens. Okay. I haven't done this way yet, so we'll see how it goes. This one's called Mad Lib for Lovers. There were
Rocks.
falling from the sky the night I met you. We could not keep our hands off,
The radio.
even though the police outfit was not real. Behind liquor boxes in the
Grocery store.
we pretended I auditioned you for the role of.
Mary Poppins.
It was the imperfect, perfect,
Soup.
when I could not produce a hot tub. Yes, the wine label was the name of.
Lead.
No. The concert was not meant for
You and I.
dancing. Indeed, the dream we both had of
Unicorns.
was a signal to parched lips that our
Relationship.
was a desert. Thank you.
You're welcome. I was like,
Oh.
is there any more?
Well, if we want, there are other Mad Libs, but I think that's going to be it for now. And no, Colleen, I'm not going to read the poem about my penis. I'm skipping over that. So. Maybe by demand later. Okay.
You can't always get what you want.
That's right, you can't. All right. Diplomacy. The president asked the dictator to be his wingman on the Ark, the last of their race in a floating fortress buoyed by melted ice caps. The women were reluctant to bed older gentlemen, and various forms of diplomacy were brought to bear, beginning with stolen identities, naval aviators good with a stick, an assertion impossible to disprove beneath smoking skies. They were assigned as janitors, used to clogs and craps, survivors of the death threats after the terrible accident, a fortune paid for the skin grafts that reformed all but their ears. The screams they remembered but yearned for, insistent breath on their necks, and the moans that swore they were iron rulers of surrounding hills and valleys, the only land moving beneath them to be drilled in the mist of the morning at world's end. 113 degrees of separation. On the hottest day ever in downtown LA, a bearded man sleeps on his chaise throne, king's jersey and cap protecting his face from the hot lance poking into his realm of cold thoughts, unremembered home. The open electrical box holds a sandwich and wax cup emblazoned with burger crown. No one dares approach this royal sleeper as our metal beasts belch fire and churn into vaults that connect to tall ice boxes. His Majesty, perhaps, has learned too well of the power of siesta and ambient horns, the white-capped mountains of his childhood, the quest for snow captured in damp fabric, the mirage that has risen around his epic. When he wakes, he will once again beat back the heat with windmill arms and curse words in ancient ash tongues. He will swing his middle finger like a scepter to protect the fragile air and our fluid forms from bursting into flames. Fruits of labors. My friend's new heart rests in a crevice that housed the pacemaker. The wires fried his old thumper like a zapped alternator. Doctors unsure this loner will ever beat. Blackberries float in a bowl on the counter, separating out the spiders and veiny leaves. Later he tells me that he has gone to some other place, a bifurcation of living and dead, subterranean with the zenith, invisible susurrus of some river with trout, with kids splashing. Thorns in those Michigan woods taught patience, fingers careful not to burst the berry's juices. There is one surgeon that goes in to save his legs with a pinnate precision, arteries flushed, and who stays at his bedside after rounds, after the new heart reboots. The taste of the jam boiled and jarred from fly-filled afternoons fills us still. He is unconscious for more than a week, with dreams that make me wonder about what will come after the jam disappears from the pantry when childhood is near. Good night. The cry of the rifle cannot be ignored. You hold it tight until silence looms. Good night, light, and the red balloon. The shoulder sling keeps your loved ones close and you burp it on the night range. Good night, little house, and good night, mouse. You swaddle it in rain, clean with soft swabs, and name your precious one after the departed. Good night, nobody, good night, mush. Separation brings joy and hands tingling from the weight of holding on tight. Good night, noises everywhere. If you guys are game, I'm going to read a few new poems. Okay. So these first two are from a book that's called Lessons in Camouflage. That's going to be coming out in about a year from CNR Press. And they're both in form. First one's a rhyming poem, which I don't do much of, but this is going to be in the Notre Dame Review. It's called The King of Camouflage. Yesterday's sky is my molting skin. My soldier's makeup stains the play on a global stage. The actor's dead, maudlin applause sweeping across your family strays. See the tapestry of faces flickering in the cracking of the windshield, the haze of suffering to raise your children, to crush third grade. Seize glory days. God's oversized disguise is my old school spin of the head, to jumble the most recent phase of who you're supposed to be. The only sin giving control to me, the king you chase with suit and tie. Power strut, my glittering ring on your finger, a distraction from the craze of waking in a cold sweat, fear of drowning, the spectacular affixing of my ways. Look into ash. I'm there where you begin. I'm the shadow that forms in front and stays long after you've lost the spark within. My power plumes in endless praise. The next poem is a ghazal. Why my father carries 3 guns. When he told me that, I wondered this. It's a poem about it. Who will be my brother in a family of guns? Their virtuoso performance is the one not given in a symphony of guns. Nothing creates more holes than earthworms. We become rigor mortis in sandstone, skin casing, and necrobiology of guns. If a gun goes off in the forest and no one hears, Gandalf teeters on a geoglyph with a thunderstick, the shamanism of guns. Paralysis is permanent and vestments are hidden. In holy places, the myth of flooding is the flooding of guns. String theory places the bullet in a state of perpetual being. Our schools teach us the tragic trigonometry of guns. And finally, I've been playing around with prose poems. First one is from a story I read in the paper. It's a continual source of amazement for me, what you read and kind of how it can influence poetry. The comet Rosetta appears on American Idol. The gimmick was dreamt up by a former astrologer turned marketer with years of hawking divination charts and dreams of a twitching universe. Rosetta was the first contestant to get an exemption to appear remotely. Her otherworldly voice was piped in from the satellite connection. Her introduction a mixed reception at best, scattered applause, and the judges unsure of their place in the larger universe. Somewhere on some delta or plain, animal eyes would see the ripple, the hole in the sky. The stakes were clear. If non-humans could win, then the crooners and auto-tuners might soon be competing with the old world charm of sperm whales, mynah birds, mating cicadas, and lone wolves. One judge berated Rosetta for off-tune whistling. Another joked that the warbling from the solar winds was soulful like a fiddle playing while a civilization burnt to a crisp. The final judge burst into tears and was inconsolable. For the end of her days, she whistled the tune of impossible endings, of a lonely voyage to know oneself, of being pulled by forces beyond our control. And finally, something I never do, but this is a poem I wrote on the flight, and I'm going to read it. You even see I made some edits about 2:30, so I don't think this is in final form, but we're going to give it a whirl. Let me know what you guys think. But I think, I'm feeling being back home in the snow. Drift. Snowbanks collect secrets, not just trees sucking on the memories of clouds, but the vast underside of innocence. I once lost my glasses playing in the backyard drifts. In every bedroom, a boy looks for himself under a sheet of tightly packed lies. I searched for months while walking the dachshund in crocheted booties, hoping my parents wouldn't discover my carelessness. How could that legendary phone booth hold 20 frat boys and a stressed out Superman? My parents did not notice my missing specs. The mystery of soda fountains blurred to pot dispensaries. I snuck shots from the scotch and waters I made them. Grains of rice tossed on newlyweds are unique in their own way and hold an indecipherable inscription. Was I scared of being erased? The coat, set over a puddle on a romantic walk, hides a broken jaw. The wind whips divots in the gray slush the day I recovered the battered frames without lenses. Uh-oh. Why did we bury everything beneath a carpet of whiteness? A dream that has never been.